Welcome back to another video. My name is Henrik and today we're going to be doing our typical consumption test with the Volkswagen ID.7 Pro. It's not the Pro S, it's the normal Pro with 286 horsepower and also the 77 kilowatts in our battery. And that's supposed to get us around 600 kilometers. On the consumption test, we're obviously going to be doing our 80 kilometers an hour test behind the truck, 120, 140, and also top speed of this car, which is 180. If you look at the car is going to be 5 meters long, and we also have 20-inch rims on here with two 45s in the front, and those are going to be 45s as well. So that is going to be the Bridgestone tires, and in the rear we also get two 55s and also 20 with the Bridgestone Potenza Sport. We're going to see how efficient this car is with a WLTP of around 14 kilowatts, so it should be fairly efficient. So let's see what this car does on the Autobahn. So join me now inside of the ID.7. We're going to do our 120 kilometers an hour test now because my colleague just did the 80 kilometers an hour test behind the truck. And then obviously 140 and then top speed. We're going to reset our tripometer to see what we get in the complete of that 120 kilometers an hour now. We have travel assist on here, which you get with the IQ Drive package. That gives you also lane keeping assist and lane departure. So a lot of safety features in general in this car. You are also going to notice that the ride quality here is fairly comfortable. We have the Ergo active seats, which are top of the class seats, heated, ventilated, and also massage function here. Another extra interior package. But in general, those are things I would always recommend getting because they are so comfortable in this car. And also a fairly quiet ride quality. It is fairly well isolated. The only thing that you do notice is that wind turbulence on the side mirrors are going to be a little bit higher when you are driving a little bit faster, but still fairly well isolated here in my opinion. Just like always, it is not going to be a typical hypermining. We're just doing a normal drive that you would be doing if you're commuting in this car in general. In the winter, we're going to turn on heated seats. In the summer, ventilated seats. We're going to have air conditioning on. We're not going to be driving in eco mode. We're going to drive it on auto. And that is, well, not hypermining. We're just doing a normal driving experience. At the end, we're going to tally everything up. We're going to look at the price. We're going to look at the theoretical range that you'd get at those speeds. We're also going to look at the average speed and just the time it took. So make sure to stick around to the end. And let's now start off with a little bit of a time lapse. The interior is also very minimalistic in this car. You can see there's no physical buttons anywhere basically. The only thing you have is, well, touch sensitive buttons. Very, very big display in the middle, which is 15 inches, and that comes standard on the car. Augmented reality heads-up display, that's the reason why you also have a fairly small digital cockpit, but that heads-up display tells you everything. Makes it fairly nice. Would love to see actual real buttons on here like in the new models, but in this one you still have touch sensitive controls. We also theoretically have ChatGPT in here, but she hasn't been working for us lately. Let's see if she works now. Was ist das höchste Gebäude in Deutschland?
Zu deiner Anfrage finde ich gerade leider keine.
She can't find an answer to that question right now, but it worked before and it tells you even a lasagna recipe, so quite cool. But in general, you have a lot of storage spaces. You have USB-Cs in here, ventilated heated seat like already mentioned, and fairly good quality. You also have the interior package plus, where you get Harman Kardon sound system with 700 watts. But in general, these seats, you really gotta opt for these seats in my opinion because they make the ride just so much nicer. And let's now do our final test, which is going to be the top speed run. So let's quickly reset our tripometer and also go into the modes and go into the most sporty settings. Then the car is going to have 286 horsepower with 545 newton meters of torque, which is quite a lot, you gotta say. And top speed of 180. 180 of this car is also fairly decent. The weird thing is the GTX variant actually gets the exact same speed of 180. Which I might have expected a little bit more from a car that's going to offer 340 horsepower. But you can hear wind turbulence a little bit louder on the left, but still I can speak very quiet in here, or just not have to speak up too much, and it's fairly comfortable to speak. I don't speak up too much, and in general the ride quality is also fairly comfortable, and you could even cruise at this for a little bit, even though consumption is going to go down quite quickly. The new ID models now also get the AP 550 powertrain, which is supposed to be a little bit more powerful and a little bit more efficient, and therefore just give you a little bit more of those horsepower. I still think the punch is fairly decent. You're going to get from 0 to 100 in about 6.5. For the basic ID model, ID.7, I think that is a fairly decent value, and in general still a fairly comfortable experience driving here at 183, which is currently the top speed. Let's see where we get our final consumption on here, and we'll get back to you in a second. So what are the numbers you need to know, and how does it compare to, for instance, the Hyundai Ioniq 6 and the rear-wheel drive that we already did a test before? Just a quick side note, the ID.7 does not come standard-wise with a heat pump. That is going to be an extra that you need to get. Ioniq 6, for instance, does get that standard-wise. When it comes to the numbers, we're obviously going to look at 100 down to 0% of driving, basically. If you were driving over a long distance, you're probably only going to be using around 70% of that, so from 80 down to 10. But for our measuring purpose, we're just going to be using the 100% to see how far you would theoretically get on each of those charges. At 100 kilometers an hour behind the truck, we got an average consumption of 13.6 kilowatts an hour. Compared to the Ioniq 6, that had 10.4. Average speed was 71.67 with a total time of 73 minutes. A little bit on the higher side due to the fact that it was Sunday and we just had to choose the one truck that was driving, and that truck was a fairly slow one. The price there is calculated with 49 cents per kilowatt hour. That is the plan that I currently use, which is $5.99 per month, and then you will be able to charge at those speeds, which is the at those costs, which is the ENBW medium plan. And with that, you will theoretically get a range, if you were to drive 100% of the battery, 566 kilometers. That is around 180 kilometers less than the Ioniq 6. When it comes to 120 kilometers an hour behind the, well, not behind the truck, but at the 120 kilometers an hour, we had 19.1 kilowatts an hour, Ioniq 6 14.9. Average speed there was 113.7 with a total time of 46 minutes and €9.36 with a total range of 403 kilometers. What you will notice is that the ID.7 does have a very good consumption when it comes to a higher speed, so maybe even a higher speed of cruising speed would be a little bit better for you. At the 140 we had 20.7 and the Ioniq 6 had 19.1 kilowatts an hour. Average speed was 124.6 kilometers an hour with 42 minutes of total time and €10.14 with a total range of 372 kilometers. If you look at the top speed test, this is where this car really does shine in my opinion. Only 23.4 kilowatts an hour. It does only have a top speed of 180, but still a fairly decent consumption compared to the Ioniq 6 that had 125.5 kilowatts an hour. However, that was also 7 kilometers an hour faster. So our average speed was 130.8, Ioniq 6 137.7. Total time was 40 minutes and the price would be €11.47. Top range then would be 329 kilometers, which is fairly decent. Obviously, you're only going to be using around 70-80% of that battery when you're driving over long distance, but how often are you going to be driving at top speeds over longer distance? Let me know what cars you'd like to see in the future. If you like this kind of content, make sure to like, subscribe. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.